Okay, Federalist 39, Part 2. We're going to work on the third paragraph. If we resort for a criterion to the different principles on which different forms of government are established, we may define a republic to be, or at least may bestow that name on, a government which derives all its powers directly or indirectly from the great body of the people and is administered by persons holding their offices during pleasure for a limited period or during good behavior. So this part is really important, so I'm going to read it to you again. We may define a republic to be, or at least may bestow that name on, a government which derives all its powers directly or indirectly from the great body of the people, and is administered by persons holding their offices during pleasure for a limited period or during good behavior. So see, when he says during pleasure for a limited period, he's talking about, for example, the members of the House of Representatives. As long as they don't do anything criminal or anything like that, they can serve a two-year term, and then the next election comes up. He says, in a republic, you're not going to change the election time. You're not going to one day say, okay, it's best if we just do it 6 months ahead of time. That's not going to happen. Now, there might be special elections. Let's say if a member of the House or Senate or somebody, we will read what the mechanism is later on. He says you can always have a special election, like if a governor passes away, this or that. You can have a special election. Other than that, you have to have an election at fixed periods of time. So he says that, and also when he says good behavior, he's talking about the federal judges. These are judges that will hold their seat, will hold their position till they are ready to retire, unless they do something illegal or immoral where they can be impeached. So as long as they don't violate law, as long as they don't do anything wrong, they can sit as a judge for as long as they want to. So this is one of the definitions of a republic. He says people have given authority to people, to representatives on their behalf, and these people are elected directly or indirectly. Okay, like for example, your ambassador to a country is not elected directly by you. You have a say in choosing the president, and the president will nominate somebody as an ambassador, and the Senate will approve or not. So they've made it this way for the system to have not only separation of powers, but checks and balances. So that's one of the definitions. So it's important to pay attention to that. Then he says it is essential to such a government that it be derived from the great body of the society, not from an inconsiderable proportion or a favored class of it. In other words, only small group of people, whether they're rich or whatever category they fall in, they are not going to be the ones choosing your representatives. It's going to be the people at large, again, directly or indirectly choosing their representatives and choosing people who work for them. Otherwise, a handful of tyrannical nobles exercising their oppressions by a delegation of their powers might aspire to the rank of the Republicans and claim for their government the honorable title of the Republic. It is sufficient for such a government that the person administering it be appointed either directly or indirectly by the people, and that they hold their appointments by either of the tenures just specified. Otherwise, every government in the United States, as well as every other popular government that has been or can be well organized or well executed, would be degraded from the Republican character. So remember that specified terms. You can't play around with the number of years people serve. Okay? One great thing that happened during the bloody Civil War, one great thing that we can look at as an example, there were elections held even during the bloodiest war America has been in. Unfortunately, the war came because, as you've known, the southern states wanted slavery to spread. And luckily, the northern states didn't want that to happen, and it had to be settled. Unfortunately, it got settled by arms and war. And luckily for everybody, for anybody who likes a Republican form of government, a federal system, Abraham Lincoln was at the helm. He was the president. So even during the bloodiest Civil War, elections happened. So he says that is one of the important things about a Republican form of government. People are the source and fountain of power. Their representatives are elected directly or indirectly for either a certain period of time, a known period of time, or they can serve during good behavior. So those are some of the characteristics of a Republican system of government. According to the Constitution of every state in the Union, some or other of the officers of government are appointed indirectly only by the people. According to most of them, the chief magistrate himself is so appointed. And according to one, this mode of appointment is extended to one of the coordinate branches of the legislature. He's talking about the Senate of State of Maryland, because in most of the states, both their House as well as their Senate, the ones that had Senate, would be elected directly. In the state of Maryland was the only one that people did not elect their senators directly. So he says he's going to list a lot of examples from different states. So he says we are very practical. We were very practical people at the Philadelphia Convention. We looked at the state experiences and we saw what the best system was, what works. That's how we've come up with the system we have. So here he says, well, the way this Constitution was written, the way we're going to elect members of the House of Representatives, the Senate, the President, ambassadors, it is reflected in the ways elections are conducted in different states. Then he continues, according to all the constitutions also, the tenure of the highest office is extended to a definite period, and in many instances, both within the legislative and executive departments, to a period of years. According to the provisions of most of the constitutions, again, as well as according to the most respectable and received opinions on the subject, the members of the Judiciary Department are to retain their offices by the firm tenure of good behavior. See, it says members of Judiciary. It's talking about the judges, especially the federal judges. He says they will serve during good behavior. So, and we've already mentioned this. The reason is a judge should not be afraid to be thrown out of his chair of being a judge because let's say members of the House or members of the Senate or a president dislikes one of his or her decisions. Also, judges have to have a fixed salary, or at least salary that cannot be reduced. This way, let's say if they judge something and let's say one of the parties inside the Congress doesn't like it, they can't just reduce his salary. So he says, you're going to have to do this to have a stable, independent government and independent judiciary. Otherwise, you will have a crazy system, a joke on your hands. So these are some of the stuff about Republican government that we need to keep in mind. So when we go to the next video in part 3, we will continue with paragraph 4 of Federalist number 39.